right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first session. My name's John O'Brien. If you didn't see me yesterday or the day before, I'm actually the moderator for today's track, and so I'll be up here introducing our great speakers like Supreet, and then also taking questions at the end. So one of the things I'd like to ask is just for everybody to kind of wait till the end for questions. That way we can make sure she gets through all of her content. And then I'll go ahead and run around and with a microphone and hopefully get all of those answered. So with that, I'd like to welcome to the stage Supreet Kaur. And here you go.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hopefully, we all are recharged for this session. It's not going to be too much information, don't worry. Before I begin, I just want to give a quick introduction, my background, why I'm here. So my journey started when I completed my master's in data science from Rutgers, and I started my career as quote-unquote data scientist, and that was in the healthcare industry. I was designing solutions for my clients, building launch strategies, forecasting models, a lot of fun. And that is when Feb 2022, Morgan Stanley approached me and I decided to pivot into finance industry, and now I'm the AI product manager, managing our flagship AI product in the wealth management division, and I'm basically responsible for developing strategies around that product, experimentation, A/B testing, fun stuff. So the agenda is pretty straightforward. I am going to take you a little back in the history, and we'll talk about what are the drivers, why AI, and then our favorite topic, generative AI, ChatGPT. And then we are going to talk about prompt engineering, what does the future look like, the risks that are associated with generative AI, and in the end, I would like to conclude with some of the best practices that I have learned so far, and then hopefully you can take that away and we'll open for questions. So let's get started. So the biggest drivers behind AI, and that is what I've also observed in the last 4 years, AI and machine learning are not buzzwords anymore, right? Though the adoption might lag slightly in the financial and healthcare industry, considering everything is red tape, highly regulated, but still they are catching up to build the next-gen data and AI solutions. So the first factor is big data. These two industries have rich customer and patient-centric data. Then they also have great resources to build that infrastructure around it. They can, if they want to, get the data from on-prem to cloud, building sophisticated and scalable solutions. There is definitely pressure from fintechs, from other competition, other legacy firms who are adopting the AI solutions or becoming the data-driven organizations, so they want to get ahead in the curve, and customers are also appreciating that, so that also motivates the firms to get there. And the last one that I personally observed is there are a lot of redundant roles still in the regulated industry, and through the adoption of AI and data-driven solutions, we can let the creative juices run for those employees and get rid of the mundane task and let them do something more creative, something more fun. So this was an interesting study that I found that I wanted to share, and this I found before the entire ChatGPT fuss came into picture. This was a survey by Nvidia, and they surveyed all the financial institutions firms to ask them, okay, what would your priorities look like in the next coming years? And conversational AI was the top 2 in 2022. And with generative AI, definitely it is reforming the way we looked at some of the conversational AI solutions. So I wanted to share these statistics, and hopefully they'll tie as I discuss the use cases in the coming slides. So let's begin with generative AI. The book definition, or like the Wikipedia definition of generative AI is here, and I'm not going to read it word by word, but basically what we need to get from this is that it's a type of AI that uses a variety of techniques such as deep learning, neural network, machine learning to produce new content. And that is not simply a modification of the data or of the training data that you give in. It's more of like the model learning the patterns to derive new insights, to give an output that you might have not imagined, or your brain couldn't have fathomed that that could come out. And this all will also make sense as we proceed in these slides. And you also know about the text to video, text to images, all of those tools that have come up, and they are leveraging generative AI as well. So, I know that we have all heard about GPT, but I still feel that GANs are not getting enough credit that they should, because they are a powerful method, specifically for the synthetic data. So that's why I wanted to put this difference out there, that even beside GPT, we have this very powerful GANs model that have a generator and a discriminator kind of a model. Generator generates new data, as the name suggests, and discriminates helps in discriminating what is fake versus real data. And if you haven't heard about synthetic data, that is one of the most powerful applications of GANs. And the next is GPT, and I know we all heard about it, but how is GPT trained? So GPT basically is trained on the entire Wikipedia corpus. So all the risks that you have been hearing, all the hallucinations that you have been experiencing is also because there is a lot of information available on the internet which is incorrect. It makes it sophisticated, yes, because it's large data, but it also makes it risky at the same time. So both a boon and a bane there. Now let's talk about some of the use cases, specifically for finance. So I'm going to touch just two industries because of the limitation of time. One is finance, and other is healthcare. So for finance, synthetic data has been proven to be powerful, specifically in the case of fraud analytics, where there are scenarios which you don't know yet, that don't occur in your historical data. So how do you tap them? That is where you rely on synthetic data, and institutions have been doing it for ages now. It's also powerful to simulate different investment scenarios and it's also helpful if you have a loan department, a credit card department, which takes care of all the defaulters or of the people who might be eligible for the next best action or the next best thing that you're offering. And the last one, which is very powerful in wealth management, is providing personalized recommendation to your customers. It's not the chatbot hasn't existed. Chatbot has existed from years. With GPT, it becomes more sophisticated. So when the customer is chatting with an advisor, it almost seems like they're talking with a normal human. So it's just an improvement in the experience that generative AI is helping them do it. And in the healthcare industry as well, and some of the companies like Janssen have already adopted it, is cancer detection. And while I was in healthcare, that was one of the biggest pain points, that the data for rare diseases is limited. Fortunately, not many people suffer from rare disease, and especially if you look for United States, there will be like hardly 200, 300 people. So how do you deal with it? How do you develop a drug for things that you don't even know what are the factors that are leading to such a disease? And that is where synthetic data helps them as well. And another is gene therapy. That is where synthetic examples and generative AI has been transforming that industry as well. And like financial customers, even patients need the customized experience. So personalization is definitely the key to tap into when thinking about generative AI. And another interesting use case that I was thinking as I was talking is when a HCP or a medical rep are having interactions, usually those interactions are very short and they don't have much time to tap into their products. So through tapping all of that and recording the conversation, usually the analytics is around figuring out, okay, what are those keywords that are used so that when the medical rep is having the conversation, it can convert into a lead. Because ultimately, pharmaceutical companies are going to get the money with the number of drugs that sell. And how will those drugs sell when the HCP prescribes them? So that is another powerful use case that we should look into. So how does it all work? It all works from prompt engineering. I'm sure everyone knows about prompts. It's basically the chat that we have been having with ChatGPT to do certain things for us. And I actually put a snippet of what I was asking it to do. But the role of prompt engineering is very important. And obviously, because of the ethical risk, the model hallucinations, and other risks that ChatGPT poses, but there has been so much content online which says, oh, these are the prompts that will make you a billionaire, or these are the prompts that will work for your enterprise. But I don't think that's the case. Prompt engineers have to be customized to your use case, to your data, and they need to give you the prompts that work for your organization. And that requires a lot of iteration, collecting feedback from the business SMEs, and then going back and designing the appropriate prompts. And that is why they will get paid. So that's the role that anyone who's interested to make money in future should look into. So some of the things I already discussed, but the future looks bright in a way that we are going towards the low-code, no-code approach. Definitely we would see AI coming out of Jupyter Notebooks and into products, which will make the experience of our business users seamless. Because earlier they used to think, oh, there's a black box that generates things and we are done, boom. So it is going to transform not only the experience for our customers through personalization, but also for our business partners. And another one that I'm excited about is some of the roles that will come with this wave of AI. So bringing all the risks under one umbrella, just to reiterate, we spoke about model hallucination, but information leak is another risk, and I'm sure you must have been following the news, what happened with Samsung, and now companies are deliberately blocking GPT because it's also posing a risk of leaking the customer data, specifically the PII. So we all want our customer data to be secure. Information leak is definitely an issue. By the way, Morgan Stanley blocked it from my laptop, so I can't use ChatGPT at work anymore. That is one way to combat it. Another is bias. And I'm sure you all must have faced it. I face it all the time, specifically when I'm asking AI to generate my headshot. It can't generate an image of a woman like me because it can't capture those cultural aspects. So definitely all of these models are still biased towards one section of the society. And then while the prompt engineers are thinking about those perfect prompts and good prompts to get the accurate output, there are people in the society who are also thinking about jailbreaks and what prompts to put for the next nuclear war or something like that. So that is risky, and that is also one risk that these models are posing right now. So let's conclude with some of the best practices for data, and then I'm also going to talk about AI. So we have talked about the use cases, but it's important to understand that nothing will be possible without the data. So earlier it was all about availability of data. Now companies are also thinking about, do we have enough data? But enough data can still be produced through synthetic data. So even if you have just 100 rows, it's okay. But are those 100 rows good enough is what you have to think about. And that is where your data quality frameworks come into practice. And then comes your dimensionality reduction techniques. If you have 1,000 variables, who is the person who's deciding what is more important than the others? Are you using PII? So a lot of those data governance models are also needed to have a responsible AI model rollout. And the last one is, do you have the right technology, right people, the right skill set to be able to deal with this extremely valuable customer data? Now, for the models, I think as a data scientist, I was always inclined to take the next best model, the next shiny model, the black box model. But as I have matured in my career, I've realized that that's not the right approach. We need to think about, do we even need a machine learning approach? Can we just do with a statistical model? Or let's say just a rule-based engine? Will that suffice, right? Because everything costs, everything comes with the cost. So as we grow in the organization, we also have to think about all those factors. Then analyzing the problem, what would be the ROI of my AI product? Who is benchmarking that? Who measures that ROI? We need to think about all those questions when we are thinking about our next AI model. What would the success of the model look like? This is such a variable measure, and I always see data scientists talking about, oh, but my MSE and RMSE was good, but that's not good enough. You need to think about also how your AI model is doing compared to your legacy systems. Because if you launch something, it should do better than the other systems. So there has to be that benchmarking. And bias versus variance trade-off is another risk that we have. Some models perform underfitting, some do overfitting. What is the right model to choose? If you're not using some automated techniques, you might have to have an array of models, compare the performances, do benchmarking, and then choose the ultimate model that goes in production. And the last one, which is my favorite, being in the regulated industry, is accuracy versus interpretability. When you have to generate explainable AI model for your model risk committee, every time you have to roll out, that's a problem, because you can't explain neural networks. You can explain, oh, what features led to that decision, but how do you explain those models? So if you don't need it, if you can't explain it, we might not even use it. So this is my concluding slide, and then I'll open up for questions. Some of the roles that I anticipate coming up, definitely prompt engineer is one. We have all seen it in the news. But others being data strategists, right, who are going to redefine how to use the data for the AI models. We would have more strategy teams coming up, and we should have more strategy teams coming up. AI product managers, such as me, so that we can test the AI product, we can collect that feedback and roll it out again. And also, I do see some development at C-suite level. We already have CDOs and CDAOs, but there's another chief AI ethics officer role which is coming up, and with that will come this entire organization of technologists and the people who have an expertise in law as well. So this blend will be fun to watch, what they do and how that fits in the organization. I know there's a lot of anticipation around, oh, AI will replace jobs, or what will happen? But I think it's an opportunity for all of us to upskill and see what we want to do next, because some of these roles don't even require you to have deep technical expertise. So yeah, I will end with that comment. Thank you, everyone, for being patient listeners.
So the best part was you covered everything. I couldn't even think of a question because it showed up on your next slide. Any questions from the audience to start off with? Well, don't worry, I have tons. So okay. Since I think you're wonderful in your role and what you're doing, so congratulations on that. You just touched on like these other roles. How do you see organizations, like a product manager, product owner is one case, but do you see competency centers or other offices around AI kind of in the future of companies?
Yeah, okay. I think definitely one thing that I've started observing, especially in the regulated sectors, is that they have this safe space, right, called Innovation Lab or Center of Enablement. Yeah. So that it's a safe lab where people can come in, do some testing, see even if data science is for them, right? And they are also doing it deliberately because there are people who want to become a machine learning engineer and become a data scientist, but they don't really know what that role entails, and they don't even know if they like it. I personally run a data science apprenticeship program in wealth management division, where we ask all the people to apply, and if they get selected, I give them like a use case, right? And that use case is already solved. That is just so that they can dip their toes, they can see what is happening, and then we can compare their performance.
Right.
And that's also another way for teams to get new talent within the organization.
Yeah, I think the closest I could imagine is this is the future IT department, right? In a lot of ways, right? We're so around IT today as kind of a center in organizations that these new AI organizations could almost replace them, I think.
Exactly.
So another question I have is, what are your thoughts about the implications or the impacts from Google, Microsoft, Meta? They're all doing all of this, and they're actually bringing it to a lot of companies, a lot of people, incorporating GPT quite often. So the Microsoft example is Copilot, right? And that's going to be assistive AI for everybody. So how will that coexist with the company's internal AI? Finance, risk, things like the use cases you pointed out.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting to see how we would be adopting this, but for anything, I don't anticipate us using something that is just available out there, right? I think there will be a lot of, there will be licensing, there will be some kind of regulation, some kind of review committees that are going to sit there to decide, like recently Morgan Stanley signed a thing with OpenAI, right? So it's just a team who's using it. Even I can't use it for now, right? Though they sit within our organization. So I do see that rollout, and I also see a phase-wise rollout where there will be a lot of leaders sitting there deciding, okay, what exactly is the burning use case that we want to solve, considering there are so many risks, and we still don't know what more is coming in terms of capabilities as well as in terms of risks. So extra scrutiny is what I anticipate.
I think that's great, because I think as people incorporate it into their work lives, then the company actually has their own products that are going to the first one you have here, which was the one that's fascinated me lately, is this idea of prompt engineer. You're one of the first people I've seen talking about that, which is great. Because I don't know about you guys, but my LinkedIn is getting flooded by prompt cheat sheets, right? Here's how you ask GPT to, correctly frame things. So do you think that might be like the future business analyst or data analyst role? It's going to be a prompt engineer, basically?
Yes, I think, but also at the same time, I think prompt engineers will have much more deeper expertise in the business, right? As a business analyst, you can just start fresh out of college. And they're saying the same for prompt engineer, but I think a successful prompt engineer will understand what to anticipate from an output. So if I see it within the wealth management division, there'll be someone who understands the business in and out, who understands the pain points of, let's say, a financial advisor or a virtual advisor, to be able to design those optimal prompts.
Right. Yeah, so that one I've definitely seen on the rise lately, so that's very interesting. And then the other one that you introduced I hadn't thought about is where you get into a lot of the business model innovation and company strategies, and it's the rapid, how fast can we innovate new disruptive business models. I never considered using AI and GPT to, say, generate a whole bunch of alternative models. Now, I've seen, you guys might see these too, right? Some of these stories where I gave ChatGPT $100 and told me the fastest way to make $1 million or something, and then it goes off and does crazy stuff. So is that an area you're actually seeing in whether your company or other companies, that companies are tackling business innovation and strategy that way?
I think they are using GANs definitely to be able to think about those edge cases and use cases. GPT, I'm not so sure if they will use it, considering it's still an evolving technology and the risks. But yeah, definitely GANs have been something that have been there for a while though now, specifically in self-driving cars, right? When they started coming up, they were using synthetic. So they actually kind of generated this idea of synthetic data within us. So yeah, that's my take
Sure, sure. And I also like your take earlier, talking about what led to this, like the big data. I always talk about the little data, BI, big data, and AI kind of transition that we're making. And what's interesting is early in my career, we were playing a lot with statistical models, and we actually generated data, right? This was early sampling and generative data, Monte Carlo simulation type work. So synthetic data, I think, like you pointed out, plays an equal role, even though it's not getting the spotlight. So that one, generating data, is a good point. Yeah, question. Oh,
Yeah,
wait.
I guess I'm gonna wait for the microphone.
Yeah, just for everybody to hear.
No, regarding the synthetic data, you were talking about and mentioned, like maybe in a cancer cause, trying to determine the cause of a specific type of cancer, having 200 data points, in the U.S., and so we can use the synthetic data to be able to come up with more data points. But I guess my question is, statistically speaking, if you only have 200 data points, you may have some bias in those data points because it's not a large enough data set to be able to give you the actual cause of what that specific cancer is, right? So in your synthetic data, wouldn't you have built into that some bias as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for asking. I was actually expecting someone to ask that. So that has been, I think, one research area where I have been more keen, and I've been reading a lot of research papers on, is your synthetic data biased? So there is ongoing research. There's not one answer, but people are approaching it using two things. One is they're coming up with some innovative metrics, which can solve and look for bias in your synthetic data, but won't really work for your real data. There's also ongoing research to find if the same metrics that can detect bias in real data, can they detect in your synthetic data. Log disparity metrics, and a lot of those metrics have been gaining popularity. But that is only limited to healthcare for now. So I was trying to find if there's research in finance. There is none. And people are still thinking about how the bias will be. But there are other methods where within the GANs, they are not generating, but they are giving a hyperparameter to be able to tune imbalanced classes, right? And can you deal with things like if there are a lot of white males over others, can you make it statistically constant? Right, so that doesn't overpower all your data sets. So there is ongoing research on that as well. Yeah, so send me a LinkedIn and I can send you those papers that I've been reading. So.
Yeah, actually, so when you look at all the biggest challenges, I think bias in data is one of the biggest ones, or lack of data.
Yeah.
Is there something else you might say is kind of the biggest obstacle to some of the AI programs out there? To me, I think those are my two. But.
Yeah, definitely, right. Like bias. I think another one is also how do you protect the customer data, because especially the one with cancer, right, that requires proprietary information of every patient, age, gender, a lot of that, right? So does your patient want that? Do your customers trust you with that? And if you're giving it to a data scientist who just graduated, they don't even know. This is PII, how do I deal with data privacy, right? So just before that step, companies are also doing data masking, right? To be able to remove all that, just put proxy attributes and then give it to a data scientist. So some level of governance would also be required to be able to,
And is there a relationship then to the explainability side when it comes to the bias and having to explain? I mean, my experience was having to define, there's this black box of stuff, we don't know why it does what it does, but we put a box in it, so.
Exactly. I mean, you can use LIME and SHAP and all of these methods, and they'll tell you, okay, why your model produced what it produced. But at the end of the day, if your senior leadership wants to understand, okay, explain me what a GAN is, or explain me what a neural network is, right? And complicated methods like that, it is obviously a little bit challenging, right? So.
Any more questions? I feel like I'm just having a conversation up here. Here you go. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned people are getting their access to ChatGPT shut down. Want to speculate any on the regulations that might come out federally or internationally as people have responses to these types of concerns?
I'm not an expert in regulation, but I would definitely like them, to act on it earlier rather than later, because considering the risks that it's posing for now. But I think internally just combating that axis, though it sucks for the employees because it can do a lot of your work, it's a good step. I feel it's a first step towards many others. Now, and I've also heard that OpenAI is taking all of these challenges seriously, and in the next versions of the model, they'll be better, and they're trying to make it more inclusive and come up with better, I would say, steps so that you can't jailbreak and get to all of these unethical questions or prompts. So it'll be interesting to see what that evolution would look like. But yeah, I don't know what that is actually.
So building on that evolution, do you foresee Morgan Stanley ever fine-tuning its own model? Or have you even experimented with that yet? And will there be a day where you take, 20% of your profit and turn that into building your own large language model for Morgan Stanley?
I haven't heard that yet. I don't know if that's going to happen. If it does, obviously, we'll have like a Bloomberg GPT. I would expect something like that, because I think ultimately companies do have to train the model on their own data just to keep that proprietary information. So the last layer of a language model will definitely be trained on their own customized data, so they would need the rights to it. So I do anticipate them, but I don't think then that will be something that public can use, but that will be just for internal use only.
Any other questions or thoughts? I like the speculation part, because a lot of this is really speculation, right? What do you think? What do I
I
think?
don't know what I don't know. That's the problem.
So my last question then
Yeah.
will be just around, so when we're talking about the future of stuff, one of the things we're also looking at, you mentioned OpenAI. I know I read recently the founder was saying that they've taken that as far as they can go. And GPT-4 was like way bigger than 3. But they're saying, yeah, we don't know what they're working on next, but that, okay, they're done, that's kind of old news while the rest of the world's spinning. At the same time, we see a lot of leaders in industry calling for a 6-month pause, like we're going too fast and things like that. So, I mean, there are two different viewpoints. Do you have any views of your own for that?
Yeah, I think the pause seems a little bit too much to expect, considering there are some people who are minting money through this, and it's a revenue model for multiple companies, for multiple freelancers, let's say. And on LinkedIn, you must have seen people, who are earning millions through this, as they claim. So I'm not sure whether the pause is necessary, but I definitely feel that if the organizations like, as I mentioned, the chief AI officer come into play, and they bring with them certain lawmakers who also have an expertise in technology, or technologists who decided to study law for a living. Those people are very few, but I do see them coming, right, with that skill set. And I have spoken to so many lawyers who are like, we think that this is a good space to enter because we can add a lot of value. So I do feel that if we get that extra layer of regulation, not only in the regulated industries, but in all the industries, that would be a game changer. And that wouldn't require a pause, because now you have that extra layer of scrutiny.
Right, catching up.
Yeah.
And then with that, do you think there's difference internationally? Different countries are going to approach this all at different rates and things like that?
Exactly. I don't even know what's happening in India or Europe.
Right.
I am still too concerned with what's happening here, honestly. So I think they might catch up, or they might already be far behind or far ahead. I don't know. But yeah, I think here that is what is required, and that's what's necessary.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.